Liwei stopped, frozen at the top floor, watching the scene unfold below him. The way she stood so close to the male model, the way the delicate fabric of the wedding dress clung to her. It stirred something he could not swallow, a heat rising in his chest that made his hands clench the railing. His assistant, noticing how tense he seemed, moved closer, concern furrowing her brow as he asked if he was all right, if perhaps he didn't like the shoot. Liwei said nothing, his eyes fixed on Amara, his mind clouded with thoughts he could not untangle. The assistant followed his gaze, curiosity flickering across her features. "Isn't that the same girl from the university? The one who visited your office when you were director?" Leaning in, she pressed, asking if they knew each other well. Liwei didn't respond, his eyes still locked on Amara, the world around him fading as he tried to steady the storm of emotions rising inside him. Back at the shoot, the photographer instructed Amara and the male model to move closer, emphasizing the passion of the wedding theme. He told the model to hold her by the waist, to lean into her, to let the eyes speak the story of love and intimacy. Amara hesitated, uncertainty flickering across her face, but the male model reassured her, moving closer, ready to wrap his arms around her. The moment was suspended, fragile and charged, until the room's attention shifted as Liwei stepped in. He stood there, eyes sharp and unblinking, the air around him thick with authority and something more dangerous, something that made her heart falter as it raced uncontrollably. She took a cautious step back from the model, forcing herself not to meet his gaze. Suri immediately rushed to Liwei's side, a bright, practiced smile plastered across her face, telling him how glad she was that he had come to see the shoot, assuring him that he would love the results. Liwei's eyes, however, remained fixed on Amara. He asked who had authorized the models. Suri, still smiling, explained that she had told him that morning and that he had trusted her judgment. Without breaking his gaze, Liwei pointed at Amara and called her over. The murmur of the room grew. Questions whispered among the crew, the tension thick as everyone wondered what he intended. Amara moved slowly toward him, hesitant, her pulse hammering against her ribs, knowing she had upset him. He stepped closer, his presence enveloping her like a shadow she could not escape, eyes boring into hers as he asked her what modeling qualifications and experience she had. She stammered, admitting she had none. Liwei chuckled softly, a sound edged with disbelief, then fixed Suri with a sharp look, questioning whether this was the kind of results she considered acceptable for a world-class campaign. Before Suri could respond, the model agent hurried forward, defending her. He reminded Liwei that he had recruited Amara, that despite her lack of experience, her looks and presence made her more than capable, and that she was performing well. He clasped her hand in his, pleading for Liwei to give her a chance. The instant their hands touched, Liwei's sharp gaze fell on them, tension coiling in his chest, and Amara, sensing his disapproval, quickly freed her hand. Liwei finally spoke, his voice low, commanding, instructing Amara to follow him to his office. He turned and walked away without another word, leaving her frozen for a moment before the agent encouraged her to go ahead, promising he would speak on her behalf. Amara nodded and walked after him, each step tentative, her mind a swirl of apprehension. When she entered Liwei's office, her steps slowed, hesitant, almost faltering. He was already seated, eyes locked on her, unyielding, leaving her heart racing, every nerve taut as if the world had shrunk to just the two of them, the weight of unspoken tension pressing down like the heat of the sun in a stormless sky. Amara stood before him, her gaze searching his, hesitant yet defiant. She took a step closer, her voice soft as she whispered, "Babe," telling him she hadn't meant to upset him. But Liwei, his voice firm and unyielding, stopped her in her tracks, warning that there were too many eyes and ears listening. In his office, in the heart of Eastgate Group, she would address him as President Lee. The word struck her, and she instinctively took a step back, nodding silently, a shiver running down her spine as she realized the seriousness in his tone. Liwei's eyes didn't leave hers. He asked if he was being too much for her, if he was controlling her or restricting her in any way from enjoying her life. Amara shook her head immediately, insisting that it wasn't like that he wasn't doing any of those things. But Liwei didn't relent. He shot to his feet, moving closer until he stood before her, his gaze piercing, his presence overwhelming. He asked why she always seemed to do the opposite of what he wanted, why she ignored the things he had told her countless times. She knew exactly what he didn't like, and yet here she was, standing so close to another man in a wedding dress, allowing him to touch her, right in the place where he could easily see her. He reminded her of the promises she had made, of the importance of communication, of telling him where she was, not to control her, but to protect her, to keep her safe. Yet here she was, appearing at East Gate Group for a photo shoot without a word to him. He admitted that he felt like a fool, seeing the woman he was supposed to call his, the woman who shared his bed and home, doing something he had no idea about. Amara tried to speak, but Liwei moved even closer. His voice lowered, cutting through the space between them as he asked if she still considered him her man. He reminded her that even before their relationship had grown serious, he had warned her that being with him was not ordinary, that it came with consequences. She had agreed, promised to listen to him and respect him, but now it seemed she was struggling to do so. He added that it wouldn't be difficult for him to do the same things she did, to go out without telling her, to get close to other women. But he didn't, because he had always kept his promise. She was the only woman he would ever look at or touch, and he respected her enough to uphold that vow. Amara's heart twisted at the sight of the pain etched across his face, the strain in his voice. She moved closer, attempting to reach for his hands, to bridge the gap, but he pulled away. His eyes remained locked on hers, as he told her that all he wanted was for her to listen, to learn to keep her promises, as he always kept his. He said she could continue working with the male models, pose however they instructed, even kiss them if required. He would not interfere. He would not dictate her actions, because it was clear that his presence had become too controlling, too confining. Tears pricked at Amara's eyes as she looked at him, her voice breaking as she asked what he meant, why he was speaking to her this way. She asked if he was breaking up with her. Liwei didn't answer. He simply sat back down, opened his laptop, and ignored her entirely. Amara tried again, insisting that it wasn't what he thought, that there must be some misunderstanding. He looked at her then, cold and unyielding, telling her he didn't want to hear it. Whatever explanation she had, she could keep it to herself. She could leave. He had work to do, and nothing else mattered. Amara's heart shattered as she stood there, the weight of his words pressing down on her, his coldness cutting deep. She turned to leave, her chest tight, tears spilling freely, when he added one final sharp reminder. Follow every rule of the photographer. Let the male models touch her however necessary, and that she should not hesitate. She stumbled out of the office, tears streaming down her face, the sting of humiliation and heartbreak mingling with the pain of his rejection. On her way out, she collided with his assistant, whose concerned gaze immediately fixed on the tears in her eyes. He asked if she was okay, but Amara didn't stop, didn't speak. She rushed past him, leaving him momentarily stunned. The assistant didn't waste a second. He hurried into the office, stopping in front of Liwei, his voice tight with concern, asking what had just happened, what had been said to make her run from him in such distress. Liwei's eyes stayed locked on the laptop screen, but the work had long since ceased. His mind raced, emotions tangling inside him, anger, frustration, helplessness. In a sudden impulsive burst, he grabbed the laptop and hurled it to the floor, crushing it entirely beneath his fury. The assistant's concern deepened, his voice trembling as he asked again what had happened, if the girl who had just left his office had said something to him. Before Liwei could respond, the door opened, and Kai stepped in, his presence cutting through the tension, the air thick with unspoken emotion, the room heavy with the echoes of everything that had just transpired. Meanwhile, Amara returned to the photo shoot, her steps slow, weighed down by the heaviness in her chest. Momo, who had been waiting anxiously, spotted her immediately and rushed over, concern etched across her face. The sight of Amara's teary eyes made her heart twist, and she asked gently if she was okay, if something had happened, trying to reach through the veil of sadness surrounding her. Amara simply looked at her, silent, her lips pressed together, refusing to speak. But Momo, growing more anxious, pressed further, asking what had happened, if Liwei had said something to her, if he had hurt her in some way. Amara's voice barely escaped her lips, trembling, telling Momo that she wanted to be alone. With that, she turned and rushed out, Momo, not willing to leave her, followed closely, careful not to break her stride. Amara reached the bathroom, her body shaking as she closed the door behind her, hiding in the shadows and breaking down completely. Tears fell freely, each one a reflection of her shattered heart, her mind replaying Liwei's words, the coldness in his eyes, the pain in his voice, the distance he had placed between them. Momo, unable to ignore the sound of her sniffles, called out her name softly, scanning the room until she found her hiding behind the door. Without hesitation, she stepped closer, wrapping her arms around Amara as she asked, gently but firmly, what exactly had happened, what Liwei had said to make her leave the studio in such despair. Amara's voice cracked through her tears as she admitted that Liwei had broken up with her. Momo froze, her eyes widening, disbelief painted on her face, her mind refusing to accept the words she had just heard. She stepped even closer, holding Amara, insisting that Liwei could never do such a thing, that maybe she had misunderstood, that perhaps she had heard him wrong. Amara shook her head, the tears continuing to streak her face, telling Momo that he had indeed said it, that he had claimed he would let her do whatever she wanted. Momo's brow furrowed as she pressed for clarity, asking why he would break up with her if it was because of the photo shoot, if he was upset. Amara nodded, confirming it. Momo's voice grew more urgent, asking if Amara had tried to explain that she had called him, sent messages to inform him about the photo shoot, yet received no reply. Amara shook her head again, defeated, and Momo's frustration ignited. "We are not going to let him get away with this," Momo said, a fire in her eyes, her hands gripping Amara's shoulders. "I'm going to see him and teach him a lesson for hurting my best friend." But Amara grabbed Momo's hands gently, pleading, her voice trembling, warning that if she caused too much drama, it might force the truth of their relationship into the open, and it wouldn't be good for either of them. Momo turned, her frustration softened by the truth in Amara's words, but her eyes remained full of concern. "You should have told him," Momo whispered, her tone a mix of exasperation and care. "He's probably misunderstanding, that's why he got upset. For him to go as far as breaking up with you, it's not right." She pulled Amara into her arms again, holding her tightly, her voice low and firm, telling her not to cry. "He hasn't really broken up with you, I promise. It's a misunderstanding. He'll come around." Amara's lips trembled as she looked up at her, asking softly if Momo thought she was a bad girlfriend. Momo's head shook violently, her voice firm and unwavering, telling her not to say such things, that she was a good girlfriend, that her heart was pure and kind. She reminded Amara that the fact she, a soft and gentle person, was able to endure and navigate a strong, arrogant, and complex man like Liwei meant she was doing something right. Many women wouldn't know how to handle someone like him, but she did, and their love had grown stronger every day. That alone proved she was doing well. Momo held her tighter, hugging her again, whispering that she shouldn't be sad. She reassured her that liwei would come around, that he was just upset, and added with a mischievous grin that if he didn't, she would teach him a lesson and skin him alive with her own hands. As they stood together, there was a knock at the door. The guy from the club called Amara's name, concern flickering in his voice, asking if she was okay. Momo quickly wiped away her tears, straightened her hair, and told her to pull herself together. They stepped out, and the guy moved closer, his eyes searching hers, asking again if she was truly okay. Amara nodded, her voice soft but firm, telling him that she was. The guy, still unconvinced, pressed her once more, and she nodded again, this time with a faint smile. He told her that if she was truly okay, they needed to continue with the shoot. Amara, her voice hesitant but steady, asked if it was possible to do a less intimate shoot, one that wouldn't require her to be so close to any male model. Curiosity flickered across his face as he asked why she was suddenly changing her mind, if the president of East Gate Group had influenced her decision. Amara shook her head firmly, telling him it wasn't liwei, that she simply wasn't comfortable. Understanding, the guy nodded, promising to adjust the shoot and find a theme where she wouldn't have to be physically close to any male model. Relief washed over her, and she smiled, the first real smile of the day, and together they walked toward the new setup, ready to continue despite the lingering ache in her chest.